Before we dive into this story, let me tell you something. For 4 years, I gave every weekend of my life to someone I loved more than anything. Then, in the blink of an eye, I was cut out. No explanation, no mercy. What came next wasn't revenge. It was truth. It was presence. It was the kind of justice that doesn't need to scream. Stick around. You'll want to hear this. And before we start, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. And don't forget to subscribe. This one's going to stay with you. My name is Margaret Foster. I'm years old, retired, and widowed. I live in a modest house in Richmond, Virginia, the kind of place with creaky porch steps and flowers planted more out of habit than hope. For the last 4 years, every single weekend of my life has revolved around one person, my grandson, Ethan. He came into this world 7 years ago, with a full head of dark hair and the most serious little face you could imagine. Julia, my daughter, wasn't exactly ready for motherhood when he arrived. She was overwhelmed, juggling work, her rocky marriage, and a never-ending pile of bills. So when she asked if I could watch him just for a few weekends, I said yes. I didn't even think about it. That was all it took. Those few weekends turned into 4 years. Every Friday evening, I'd pick Ethan up from daycare. We'd bake cookies, mostly chocolate chip because that's what he loved. We watched movies, built pillow forts. I read him stories until he fell asleep on my chest. I taught him how to ride a bike, how to tie his shoes, how to make scrambled eggs just right. When he had the flu, it was me who rocked him through the night while Julia was out of town on business. When he lost his first tooth, it was under my pillow that he tucked it. I was the one who saw him first thing Saturday morning and kissed him goodbye every Sunday night. I didn't do it out of duty. I did it out of love. Because when Ethan smiled up at me and said, "You're my favorite person," I felt like I still had a purpose in this world. Julia? She rarely said thank you. Most weekends she'd rush in, pick him up without a word, barely making eye contact. At first, I chalked it up to stress, but as the years went by, the distance between us only grew. She'd criticize the snacks I gave him, roll her eyes when I gave advice. Once, she snapped at me for trimming his nails, said I was crossing boundaries. Boundaries? I had wiped that child's tears, bathed him, fed him, loved him more than I knew was possible. But for her, it was never enough, or maybe it was too much for her ego, too much of a reminder of what she hadn't done. Still, I stayed quiet. I swallowed my pride, bit my tongue, smiled when I wanted to cry. Because being in Ethan's life was worth more than winning an argument. That little boy didn't ask to be the rope in a silent tug-of-war between his mother and grandmother. Then came the day everything started to shift. It was a normal Saturday morning. Ethan was glued to his tablet, watching those fast, loud videos that always made me uneasy. His eyes were glazed, fingers tapping like he was hypnotized. I sat beside him and gently said, "Sweetheart, maybe it's time for a break. Let's play outside a bit, He looked at me and nodded. Ethan never gave me trouble. But right then, Julia walked in, arms full of grocery bags. She heard me and froze. "I told you," she said, not looking at me. "I let him use the tablet as long as he wants. It's not a big deal." I replied calmly, "I just think a little fresh air wouldn't hurt. That's all." She dropped the bags on the counter with more force than necessary. "You always think you know best, don't you? Always have to interfere." I was stunned. I wasn't interfering, I was just... She cut me off. "You don't need to come next weekend. I've got it." I blinked, unsure if I'd heard her right. "What do you mean?" "I mean," she said, grabbing her keys without even looking at me, "you don't need to watch him anymore. I'll make other arrangements." And with that, she walked out. I stood there for a long time, in the silence that followed, my hands trembling slightly, heart pounding in my ears. I didn't know if it was anger or sadness or both. All I knew was something had shattered, something I never thought would break. I told myself it was just a bad moment, that she'd cool down, that it would blow over. But deep inside, a part of me knew something had just changed forever, and I wasn't ready for what was coming next. The days after that Saturday blurred together in a haze of confusion and hurt. I kept checking my phone, waiting for Julia to call, to text, to say she'd overreacted. But nothing came. No messages, no apologies, just silence. By Thursday, I still hadn't heard a word. That's when I saw it. I was scrolling through Facebook, a mindless habit I picked up after my husband passed. I wasn't looking for anything, but there it was. Julia's post. A bright, cheerful banner that read, "Ethan's turning. Come celebrate with us." Attached was a digital invitation. Balloons, cupcakes, the whole deal. There were over 30 names tagged in the post. Cousins, neighbors, friends from her yoga class. Everyone. Except me. I stared at the screen, rereading it over and over like maybe I missed my own name. Maybe it was a mistake. But no. She'd made it clear. This wasn't just a slip. It was deliberate, calculated. She was throwing a birthday party for the boy I practically raised, and I wasn't invited. I clicked on the comments, the usual stream of emojis and can't wait messages. One aunt even commented, "So happy for Ethan. He's lucky to have such a great mom." That one hit hard. I didn't respond. I didn't comment. I just closed my laptop and sat in the quiet, the kind that presses against your chest and makes it hard to breathe. That evening, I tried to call Julia. No answer. I left a message. "Julia, please, can we talk? I don't understand what's happening." She didn't call back. I called again the next day. This time she answered. Her voice was flat. "What is it, Mom?" "I saw the post," I said. "You're really doing this without me?" She sighed. That long, dramatic kind of sigh that lets you know you're already losing. "I told you. I need some space. We're just keeping it small this year. Close friends. No stress." "No stress?" I laughed, but it came out bitter. "I've watched Ethan every weekend for 4 years, Julia. I changed his diapers. I held him when he had night terrors. And now I'm not close enough to be at his birthday?" She didn't answer right away. Then, quietly, she said, "Mom, I think we need boundaries. You don't always respect how I do things." My mouth went dry. "So this is punishment?" "It's not punishment. It's a decision," she said, and then added, "Anyway, I have to go." And just like that, she hung up. I stood in my kitchen, phone in hand, feeling like I'd been slapped across the face. Boundaries? I had spent the last decade tiptoeing around every word, every opinion, just to stay close. I had bent myself in half to keep peace, and now I was being erased. I didn't cry. Not yet. Instead, I started thinking. I thought about all the mornings I woke up early to pack his bag, all the school projects I helped with, all the times I canceled plans, pushed through pain, ignored my own needs to be there. I thought about the look on Ethan's face when he used to run into my arms, calling me Mimi, like it was the most natural thing in the world. And now, in the eyes of his mother, I was an outsider. That night, I sat at the edge of my bed, the room lit only by the soft glow of the bedside lamp. I stared at a photo of Ethan on my nightstand, him in a red hoodie, frosting on his chin, grinning like the world was made of cake and love. The tears finally came, hot and angry. But beneath the sorrow, something else stirred. Not rage, not revenge, resolve. If she wanted to rewrite the story, to erase me from the narrative, then fine. But I'd write my own chapter, and I'd do it for him. I didn't know exactly how yet, but I knew one thing for sure. I would not go quietly. Friday morning came like a fog, heavy and slow. I woke up before sunrise, habit mostly, but also because sleep had turned its back on me. My mind was a looping reel of memories. Ethan in his Halloween costume, Ethan asleep on my chest, Ethan drawing crooked little hearts with Mimi written inside. I had no plans for the day. No pickup time, no grocery list for snacks, no little backpack by the door. For the first time in years, my weekend was completely empty. I walked around the house like a stranger. His toys were still tucked in the basket by the fireplace. His toothbrush still sat next to mine in the upstairs bathroom. Everything in that house whispered Ethan, and the silence was a scream I couldn't escape. I sat down with my coffee, my hands still trembling slightly, and opened Facebook again. I didn't want to. I knew it would hurt, but something in me needed to see it. The party plans were unfolding in real time. Julia had posted another update, a picture of the birthday cake, 2 tiers, superhero-themed, fondant letters spelling Ethan is. The caption read, "Can't wait to celebrate my boy. Sunday's gonna be amazing." My stomach twisted. Comments poured in. "Looks delicious. He's growing up so fast. Best mom ever." I didn't belong in that world anymore. The one where my daughter was a loving parent and I was just background noise, forgotten. At some point, I checked the list of people tagged again. Friends, family. Even my neighbor Ruth was going. Ruth, the woman I gave my casserole recipe to. the one who came over for tea after her surgery. She hadn't even mentioned it. And me? Still not a single word, not a message, not even a polite excuse. I was being erased, not just from the event, but from my own family's story. So I did what I always do when the pain gets too loud. I cleaned. I scrubbed the kitchen floor until my knees ached, washed every dish, wiped down every counter, rearranged the books in the den by color, then by size, polished the picture frames. That's when I saw it. On the shelf in the hallway, between two ceramic birds Ethan gave me for Mother's Day, was a framed photo of us at the zoo. He was maybe 5. We were standing by the giraffe enclosure, both holding ice cream cones. He had chocolate all over his chin, and I had that look in my eyes, the one where love spills out even when you're not trying. I took the frame down, sat on the floor, and held it against my chest. How could she do this? It wasn't just the party. It was everything. The years of biting my tongue, the way she always dismissed me, corrected me in front of others, acted like my love was inconvenient, like I was something she tolerated rather than cherished. But I'd kept going, for Ethan, because he was the light, the one who made it worth it, the one who looked at me with wonder, not resentment, the one who never made me feel like too much. Now even that was being taken from me. I didn't eat that day. I didn't speak to anyone. I sat in that hallway until the sun went down, holding that picture like it was the only proof I had that I mattered. Then, sometime after midnight, I picked up my phone and opened the family group chat. There it was again. More chatter about the party. A cousin asking what time to show up. Someone else offering to bring extra chairs. Still nothing to me. I typed a message, fingers shaking. Thanks to everyone who's going to Ethan's party on Sunday. I won't be there. I wasn't invited. Then I hit send. It was the quietest scream I'd ever let out. No one replied. Not immediately. Not for hours. But I'd said it. I'd stopped pretending. And for the first time in a long, long time, I felt the tiniest flicker of something I hadn't felt in years. Anger, clarity, strength. I was no longer just a forgotten grandmother. I was a woman who had been hurt, deeply, and who had finally decided to stop swallowing the pain. And what I did next, well, that's when everything changed. I didn't sleep that night. I just lay in bed, staring at the ceiling fan spinning overhead, listening to its faint ticking sound, like a clock counting down to something inevitable. Morning arrived with a dull gray light leaking through the curtains, and I felt hollow. But I wasn't broken. Not yet. That group message, it stirred something. Not because anyone replied. They didn't. But because, for once, I hadn't swallowed my truth. Saturday morning came. The day I was supposed to have Ethan. The day we usually baked muffins together or made cardboard rocket ships. But my kitchen was cold. My living room quiet. I tried to distract myself. I turned on the TV but couldn't follow a single word. I made toast and let it go cold. I watered the garden, then sat on the back steps for over an hour, just watching the breeze move through the trees. It wasn't until I went inside that I saw it. A missed call from Ruth. I stared at it, unsure whether I had the energy to listen. But I tapped the voicemail anyway. Hey, Margaret, I saw your message. I didn't realize you weren't invited. I just assumed. She paused. I'm sorry. If I had known, I wouldn't have. Anyway, if you need anything, I'm here. She sounded uncomfortable. Guilty, but not enough to back out of the party. The message didn't hurt me. It confirmed what I already knew. People prefer to stay comfortable, even if it means siding with silence over truth. That afternoon, I went up to Ethan's room, or as much of a room as he had in my house. It was really a corner of the guest room. A small bed with dinosaur sheets, a lamp shaped like a rocket, a basket of well-loved toys. I sat there and let the memories come. Ethan brushing my hair with his tiny fingers. Ethan telling me I was better than Santa. Ethan falling asleep with his hand in mine. I thought I'd feel sad, and I did. But something else was there now, rising slowly, like smoke curling up from a steady flame. I realized I had a choice. I could continue to let Julia dictate my role in Ethan's life, treat me like a side character in a story I helped write, or I could remind everyone exactly who I was, not with bitterness, not with cruelty, with truth, with love, with presence. I stood up, wiped my eyes, and went to my desk. I pulled out a notebook and started making a list. A very specific list. Decorations, cupcakes, a venue. I knew Ethan's favorite theme. I knew which flavor of cake he liked. I knew his friends, his little cousins, the songs he loved to dance to. And I knew that his birthday was not just a Sunday on Julia's calendar. It was a celebration of a life I had poured my heart into. So I made a plan. I would throw him a birthday party. Not a protest, not a tantrum, a celebration. One day earlier. One day before the real party. One day that would remind everyone, and especially Ethan, that I had been there all along. But I wouldn't tell Julia. This wasn't about her. This was about showing Ethan, and myself, that I hadn't disappeared, that I wouldn't be erased. That night, I called the church down the street, where Ethan had once sung in the Christmas play. They had a small community hall. I'd helped with bake sales there. I knew the coordinator, Helen. She answered on the second ring. "Margaret," she said, surprised. "What can I do for you?" "I need a favor," I said, voice steady. "I want to book the hall for a birthday party. Tomorrow." She hesitated. "That's short notice." "I know," I said, "but it's important." She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "You've always shown up for us. Of course we'll make it happen." I nearly cried, not because of the favor, but because someone saw me, saw my value. I stayed up most of the night, pulling out old boxes from the attic, streamers, paper lanterns, tablecloths from past holidays. I dusted off folding chairs, wiped down platters, made lists and phone calls, and sent invitations to the people who mattered, not the ones who would judge me, the ones who knew me. I didn't ask them to take sides. I just said the truth. "I'm throwing a small birthday party for Ethan, Saturday, at the church hall. I'd love for you to come." Some of them paused. Some didn't reply right away, but others said yes, and that was enough. As I packed goodie bags at 2 a.m., surrounded by balloons and frosting-smeared utensils, I looked around and felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. Not sadness, not anger, a sense of purpose. Tomorrow, I would show up, not because I was invited, but because I mattered, because he mattered, and no one could take that away from me. I woke up early, even before the sun. My hands ached from all the prep the night before, blowing balloons, tying ribbons, icing cupcakes, but I didn't care. My whole body buzzed with a strange mix of nerves and something I hadn't felt in weeks, anticipation. I brewed my coffee and looked out the kitchen window. It was still dark, but I could see the first hints of morning breaking through. Today wasn't just Saturday, it was our day. Mine and Ethan's. The day we'd reclaim something no one had the right to take away. By a.m., I was at the church hall. Helen had already opened up and helped me drag in the folding tables. The place wasn't fancy, linoleum floors, those clunky plastic chairs that always wobble. But I was going to fill it with color, with joy, with us. I laid out the decorations, dinosaurs, because that was still Ethan's obsession. Green streamers, dino print plates, and a banner I made myself that read, "Ethan's Big Day." I hung it crooked at first, and instead of fixing it, I laughed. He'd love that. The cake arrived at chocolate with a vanilla filling. Little plastic dinosaurs climbing up the sides. I'd ordered it from the same bakery that made his first birthday cake. The woman at the counter had smiled when I told her it was for my grandson. "He's lucky to have a grandma like you," she said. She didn't know the half of it. By noon, the tables were set. And the smell of freshly baked cupcakes filled the room. People began to trickle in. Cousins, friends from church, even one of Ethan's classmates with his parents. Each person walked through the door carrying something more than a gift. They brought validation, quiet loyalty, unspoken understanding. And then, right on time, Ethan arrived. He thought he was just coming over for our usual Saturday. Julia had dropped him off early, clearly eager to be rid of him while she prepared for her party the next day. She didn't even walk him to the door. He came in, backpack swinging, and yelled, "Mimi!" "Hey, buddy," I said, kneeling down to hug him. "Want to take a little ride?" He grinned. "Where to?" "You'll see." We got in the car, and he asked me question after question the whole way. I told him we had a surprise. He tried guessing. The park? The zoo? A toy store? When we pulled up to the church hall and I opened the doors for him, his jaw dropped. The room exploded with applause and cheers. Music played softly in the background. The tables were full of food, decorations, and, most of all, people who knew what today meant. Ethan turned to me, his eyes wide. Is this for me?" "All for you, sweetheart," I said. trying not to cry. He ran into the room, touching everything, hugging everyone. He danced, he played games, he laughed that kind of belly laugh only kids can make. And every time he looked at me, I saw something I'd been afraid I'd lost. Connection, recognition, love. We ate cake. He blew out candles. I helped him open presents. At one point, he whispered in my ear, "This is the best party ever, Mimi." And just like that, every ache, every insult, every rejection, it faded into the background. Because this was real. This joy, this bond, this truth. I saw a few people taking pictures, posting them online. I didn't stop them. Let Julia see. Let her scroll through her phone tomorrow and realize that she didn't get to write the whole story. That no matter how tightly she tried to control the narrative, I was still in it. Not because I demanded it, because I earned it. Later, as the guests said their goodbyes and the hall quieted down, Ethan came over with a piece of cake in his hand. "Do I get 2 birthdays now?" he asked, half serious. I smiled. "Well, this one's special. This one's just for us." He nodded and leaned his head against my arm. I held him close, breathing in the moment. I didn't know what Julia would say when she found out. I didn't know what would come next. But right then, with Ethan in my arms, surrounded by the people who mattered, I felt whole again. I had shown up. I had reminded the world, and myself, who I was. And nothing would ever take that away. I barely slept that night, but for the first time in weeks, it wasn't from pain. It was from peace. A quiet kind of satisfaction hummed beneath my skin. I had done it. I had given Ethan the kind of day he deserved, and I had reminded myself that I wasn't invisible. But the silence that followed the party was thick and heavy, like the air before a storm. Sunday morning, I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of lukewarm coffee and waited. I knew Julia would find out. The photos were already making their way through the family circle. Smiling faces, a dinosaur cake, Ethan holding a balloon in each hand, beaming like he had no idea what kind of emotional battlefield surrounded him. I wasn't sure how or when the explosion would happen, but I knew it was coming. It happened just after noon. I was putting away dishes when the knock came, hard and fast, no rhythm to it. My heart kicked in my chest before my feet even moved. When I opened the door, Julia was standing there, arms crossed, eyes sharp. "You threw him a party," she said. It wasn't a question. It was an accusation. I took a breath. "Yes, I did." Her mouth twisted. "Behind my back? Without asking me?" I stepped aside and motioned for her to come in. She didn't move. "I'm not here for coffee, Mom." "I didn't offer," I replied. Quieter than I expected. She stared at me, jaw tight. "You completely overstepped. That was my party to throw." "And I'm his grandmother," I said, matching her tone. "I've been with him every weekend for 4 years. You took that away from me without warning, without explanation, and then threw a party I wasn't even invited to." "So no, Julia." I didn't ask, "because you made it clear my presence wasn't wanted." She blinked, as if the words slapped her. "You're always making yourself the victim." I laughed once, hollow. "You think this is about me? This is about a little boy who deserves to be celebrated by everyone who loves him. And whether you like it or not, I love him. I've been there for him." "He's my son," she said sharply. "And he's my grandson," I snapped. "That doesn't disappear because you're having a bad week and want to punish someone." For a moment, we both stood in the doorway, breathing heavily. 2 women who had been dancing around this fight for years. Only now it had finally erupted. "You always do this," she said bitterly. "You act like you know best, like you're the only one who cares." I felt something in me crack, not out of anger, but out of long, simmering heartbreak. "I know what it feels like to be dismissed by your own child," I said softly. "To be treated like background noise. Like everything I gave, everything I am, is just a nuisance now." Julia looked away. I could see her eyes flicker, just for a second. "I'm tired of shrinking myself so you'll be comfortable," I continued. "I've done it for years, but I won't apologize for loving Ethan. I won't apologize for showing up when no one else did." There was a long pause. The kind where truth fills every inch of space. Julia finally muttered, "You should have told me." "I shouldn't have had to," I said. "But I did tell you. 100 different ways. You just never listened." She turned away then, walking back down the steps toward her car. I didn't call after her. I didn't beg. I just stood there in the doorway of my own house, heart pounding, hands steady. She didn't slam the car door. She didn't drive off fast. But she didn't say goodbye either. And as I watched her pull away, I felt something unexpected wash over me. Not regret, relief. For once, I had spoken my truth without flinching. I didn't know what would happen next, if she'd try to retaliate, if she'd keep Ethan from me, if this would be the final wedge between us. But I knew one thing for sure. I had finally stopped asking for permission to matter. And that was the beginning of something I'd been waiting for my whole life. Sunday came with a weight I couldn't ignore. It wasn't guilt. I had shed that skin the moment Julia walked away from my porch without saying a word. No, this was something else. A waiting, a knowing, the feeling that something was about to shift. I didn't expect to hear from her. I knew she wouldn't call. But what I didn't know was that I was about to witness my quietest act of defiance echo louder than any fight we'd ever had. It started with the photos. By noon, I got a message from Linda, my cousin from out of state. Saw the pictures from Ethan's party. It looked beautiful. You did right. Margaret, don't let anyone tell you different. I stared at the message, not even realizing I'd been holding my breath. The pictures were out there. Ethan smiling, Ethan hugging me, Ethan holding his cake with a missing tooth and a glow in his cheeks I hadn't seen in months. More messages came. From a neighbor. Didn't know Julia was excluding you. Honestly, that was low. From a fellow church member. You're the heart of that boy's life. Don't forget that. Some didn't say anything outright. Just heart emojis. Just a quiet, "We see you." I didn't reply to most. I didn't need to. The party had spoken for itself. Then came the update I hadn't been looking for. A photo Julia posted from her party. The backdrop was elaborate, one of those rented, Instagram-ready balloon arches. A DJ in the background, catered food, expensive, polished, but there was something off. Ethan looked tired. He stood in the center of the photo, holding a slice of untouched cake, eyes not on the camera, but somewhere else entirely. His smile didn't reach his eyes. His shoulders slumped just enough to tell me everything I needed to know. That wasn't his real birthday. His real birthday had already happened. It had happened in that little church hall with wrinkled tablecloths and dollar store decorations, and a grandmother who knew his favorite color and favorite dance move and the exact way to get him to laugh until he snorted. That's where his heart had been. And apparently, I wasn't the only one who noticed. As the day went on, people began to talk. A cousin messaged me. Honestly, the party today felt off. Ethan kept talking about the one yesterday. Another one wrote, he told everyone his real birthday already happened at Mimi's. And that was the moment I realized. My silence had been louder than Julia's erasure. By not fighting, by not dragging her name through the mud, by simply showing up for Ethan and loving him in the only way I knew how, I had drawn a line she couldn't cross. She could control a guest list. She could control a calendar. But she couldn't control love. She couldn't control what Ethan remembered. Later that evening, as I sat on the couch flipping through the leftover party pictures, one stuck out to me. It was of Ethan hugging me, cheek pressed against my chest, his tiny arms wrapped around my middle like he was anchoring himself to me. That photo, more than the cake, more than the decorations, told the whole story. It was the proof that when the noise faded and the balloons deflated, what stayed was presence, was memory, was connection. And no matter what came next, that was mine. Unshakable, undeniable, uninvited, but unforgettable. I had just finished folding the last of the tablecloths from the party when I heard the knock again. This time, slower, heavier. I didn't need to guess who it was. I opened the door, and there she was, Julia. No makeup, her hair pulled back in a messy bun, a phone in one hand, her keys clenched in the other, like a weapon she wasn't sure she wanted to use. She didn't say hello. You embarrassed me, she said. Ooh. Her voice tight. I didn't flinch. Come in or not, Julia. I'm not doing this in the doorway again. She hesitated, then stepped inside. We stood in the kitchen, the air thick between us. She didn't sit. She just paced once, turned back to face me. You knew what you were doing. Yes, I said, calm, clear. I knew exactly what I was doing. You threw a whole party behind my back, without even telling me. After you uninvited me from his birthday? After you cut me off like I meant nothing? What did you expect, Julia? That I'd just sit in silence while you erased me? She scoffed. It wasn't about erasing. It was about space. You never know when to back off. I looked her dead in the eye. Back off? From my own grandson? After I raised him every weekend for 4 years? You want me to back off from that? Her lips trembled, just slightly, but she masked it quickly. I'm his mother. I've never tried to take that from you, I said, but you've tried to take everything from me. The joy, the bond, the right to love him openly. She shook her head, pacing again. You always make yourself the victim. No, I said. I stayed quiet for years. You think I didn't hear every eye roll, every dismissal, every time you corrected me in front of people like I was some old woman who couldn't be trusted? I let it go because I thought, it's not worth the fight. I'll keep the peace. I paused. My voice dropped. But this time, Julia, you crossed the line. You took something sacred and used it as a weapon. You turned Ethan's birthday into punishment. Not just for me, for him. She opened her mouth. But I held up a hand. No, I said. It's my turn. I walked over to the counter, picked up a framed photo of Ethan holding the little dinosaur figure from the party. I placed it in front of her. He told me it was the best day of his life. Julia stared at the photo, arms tightening over her chest. You humiliated me, she whispered. No, I said. I reminded you of what I've done, of who I am, of what you've chosen to forget. She looked down at the counter. For a long time she said nothing. Then finally, softly, you didn't have to do it like that. I didn't want to do it like that, but you gave me no other choice. The silence between us felt like years. And then, the most unexpected thing happened. She looked up at me, her voice low. He wouldn't stop talking about it. Your party, he said. He wished you were at mine. I swallowed hard. My throat burned. I know. For the first time, her shoulders sagged, just a little. The fight in her eyes dulled. She leaned against the counter like her legs couldn't quite hold all the weight anymore. Do you know how hard it is? She asked, barely above a whisper. Being a mom? Being judged all the time? I nodded slowly. Yes, I do. I remember. She looked at me like she was seeing me for the first time in a long while. I'm tired, she said, and in that moment, I realized something. So was I. But tired doesn't mean defeated. I didn't reply. I didn't reach out. I let her stand there in that stillness, in that reckoning. Because for once, she wasn't in control of the narrative, and she knew it. She picked up her keys, hesitated again, and then said without looking at me, I'll call you. And she left. I sat down, the photo still in front of me. I didn't cry. I didn't celebrate. I just breathed, a deep, steady breath, and held on to the only truth I needed. I had finally said the things that had lived in my throat for years. And even if nothing changed after that, I had changed. And that was the beginning of everything. The days that followed were strange, quiet, but not in the peaceful way, more like the quiet after a fight, when nothing feels settled, just suspended in the air, waiting to fall. I didn't hear from Julia, didn't hear. Not a call, not a text, not even a picture of Ethan. And yet, somehow, I knew she was listening. The family group chat had gone silent. No one said a word. It was like everyone was waiting to see who would speak first, and no one wanted to take sides, or maybe they already had. I didn't push. I didn't reach out again. Instead, I focused on what mattered. I printed the photos from the party, framed a few for Ethan's room in my house. I cleaned up the decorations, folded the leftover napkins, tucked the dino-themed plates back into a bin labeled Ethan's stuff. Because despite everything, I still believed he'd be back. Maybe not next weekend, maybe not the one after that. But one day, I had to believe that. Then came the ripple. It started when Claire, my niece, called me. She'd been at both parties. Hey, Aunt Margaret, she said, unsure. I just wanted to say, I think what you did was brave. I sat down slowly. Brave? Yeah. I mean, people are talking. But I was there. I saw Ethan on Saturday. He was happy. Not just birthday cake happy, like full heart, light in his eyes happy. I didn't know what to say. And Sunday, she continued, he just wasn't the same. He looked tired. He told me I already had my party with Mimi. He said it like that one was real. You know? My throat tightened. Thank you for telling me that. More calls trickled in. Some texts, a message from a friend at church. That little boy adores you. Don't let anyone try to rewrite that. People weren't just taking sides. They were remembering. And Julia? She couldn't hide from that. I didn't want revenge. I didn't want her shunned or shamed. But I wanted the truth seen. I wanted the record set straight. I wasn't some bitter grandmother acting out of spite. I was someone who had been there, who had shown up, who had been pushed aside because it was easier than facing what I represented. Love that never left. A mirror that showed her what she didn't want to see. Later that week, I ran into one of Julia's friends at the grocery store. The awkward pause in her smile said everything. She finally said, "I didn't know what was going on. I just thought maybe you were traveling or something." I smiled, but it didn't reach my eyes. "No, I was here, just not invited." She looked uncomfortable. "Well, the party was nice." "Nice," I repeated. "That's something." She hesitated, then added, "Ethan wouldn't stop talking about your party." And that was it. That was the pattern. No one could say what they were really thinking. Not to Julia, at least. But they were starting to see the story differently. The narrative she tried to control was slipping. And not because I fought her. Because I simply lived my truth out loud. And Ethan? He was the loudest part of it. Apparently, he'd told his teacher about my party too. Drew a picture of the dinosaur cake. Said it was his real birthday. Julia must have heard. I can only imagine how it stung. Hearing that her meticulously planned event had been reduced to an afterthought in her own child's eyes. And I didn't feel smug. I felt seen. The silence between us still stretched wide, but I had said everything I needed to say. Now, it was her turn. Or not. Either way, I was done shrinking. The storm had passed, and in its wake, something new was beginning to grow. Sunday arrived again, exactly 1 week after the storm broke. The memory of last weekend was still fresh. Ethan's laughter, the warmth in that church hall, the quiet fire in my chest when Julia confronted me at my own door. But this Sunday wasn't about confrontation. This was her day, her official party, the one she had planned, the one she had deemed intimate, where I didn't belong. I didn't expect an invitation, and I didn't need one. But I won't lie. There was a flicker of curiosity, not to see the decorations or the guest list, but to know, would they notice? Would they feel the absence? Around p.m., I sat on the porch with a glass of sweet tea and watched the world go by. The sun was hot, the cicadas loud, and my neighborhood felt oddly quiet for a Sunday. I thought about what Ethan was doing at that exact moment. Blowing candles, maybe. Playing games. Opening gifts from people who hadn't been there when he cried through stomach aches or scraped his knees learning to ride a bike. I didn't scroll social media. I didn't need to. The messages found me anyway. First, one from Ruth, my neighbor. I stopped by the party for a bit. It felt weird without you there. Then Claire again. "I think half the guests expected to see you. Ethan kept asking where you were." And then this. He told me it wasn't his real birthday. He said, "Mimi already gave me the real one." I closed my eyes. It wasn't vindication I felt. It was validation. Proof that presence speaks louder than anything. That even a child, barely 8, could feel the difference between love that shows up and love that simply hosts. Later that evening, I did glance online. Julia had posted only one photo. One. Ethan stood in front of a pile of gifts, a banner behind him that read, "Happy 8th birthday." The image was fine, pretty, polished, but sterile, like a magazine cover staged by someone trying to prove something. And Ethan? He wasn't smiling. He looked tired. Not sad, not angry, just worn out, like someone who had already been through the celebration that mattered. Aunt Kathy called me shortly after. She never picks sides. She's the kind of woman who bakes casseroles for both ends of a family feud. But her voice was gentle, thoughtful. "I just wanted to say," she began, "you did what any real grandmother would have done." "I wasn't trying to compete," I said. "I know," she replied, "but you won anyway." And she was right. Not in the way people usually mean. I didn't win by having the better party or more guests. I won because Ethan felt seen. Because I had given him something his mother, in all her effort to control and curate, had overlooked. A space to just be loved. Not paraded, not posed, not performed, just loved. And no matter how many presents he opened that day, none of them would match the feeling of being held close by someone who knew his favorite dinosaur, the name of his imaginary friend, and how he liked the crust cut off his sandwiches. That night, I didn't wait for Julia to reach out. I didn't expect her to. I had already said what needed saying. I had acted when silence became unbearable. Now the silence was hers to hold, and whether she chose to fill it or not, I was no longer afraid of being left out, because I knew now I hadn't been excluded. I had risen, above pettiness, above shame, above erasure, and in doing so, I had found the version of myself I thought I'd lost years ago, the version who no longer asked for a seat at the table. She brought her own chair. Days passed, and the dust from the party began to settle. The photos stopped, the comments faded. Life, as it tends to do, moved on, but something in the air had changed. Julia still hadn't called, and yet I knew she would. It was Tuesday afternoon, cloudy and quiet, when the phone finally rang. I stared at the screen longer than I should have, her name glowing like a challenge. I picked it up. "Hi," she said, her voice small. "Hi." A pause, a deep one, the kind filled with all the words we'd never said. "Can we talk?" she asked. I didn't hesitate. "Yes." She came by that evening. No Ethan, no car seat in the back, just her, alone, walking up my porch steps like she wasn't sure if she'd be let in. I opened the door and stepped aside. This time, she didn't linger on the threshold. She walked in and sat at the kitchen table, the same place where, just a week ago, she stood and accused me of betrayal. But this wasn't that woman. This was someone softer, smaller, tired. I sat across from her. The silence stretched again, long and delicate. She broke it first. "Ethan misses you." I nodded slowly. "I miss him too." She looked down at her hands, turning her wedding ring around her finger like it held answers. "I don't know why I did it," she said. "I was just angry. I don't even know at what." "You were angry at me," I said gently. "Yes," she admitted, her voice cracking. "But it wasn't about the tablet, or even the party. It's like, you're always there. You always were there. And it made me feel like you weren't," I offered. She looked at me, tears brimming. "Yes." I let that sit. "Do you know what it's like?" she continued. "To be the mom, but feel like the second choice?" The question hit me in the gut. I'd never heard her say anything like that. "Never. I never wanted to replace you," I said quietly. "I only stepped in where there was space. I didn't do it to take over. I did it because he needed me. Because you needed me." "I know," she whispered. "And I think I resented you for it, even while I needed you." She wiped a tear away, embarrassed. "I've been so angry at myself for not being more present, for not knowing how to be the kind of mother I thought I should be. And every time Ethan came home talking about you, it just reminded me." "That you weren't enough?" I asked. She nodded. I reached across the table, slowly, carefully, and placed my hand over hers. "Julia, you were doing your best. I saw that. I never judged you. Not once." Her lip quivered and she looked away. "But you judged me," I said softly. "You punished me for loving him too well. That broke something." She sobbed then, not loud, not dramatic, but deep, the kind of cry that comes from years of unspoken guilt, of trying to hold it all together, of being a mother who never stopped fearing she wasn't enough. "I'm sorry," she said through the tears. "I was wrong about everything. You didn't deserve that." And in that moment I felt the ice inside me melt, because for the first time Julia wasn't just speaking, she was listening. I squeezed her hand. "I don't need perfection from you," I said. "I never have, but I do need honesty. I need respect." She nodded, still wiping at her cheeks. "And I need Ethan to grow up knowing that family means presence, not pride, not power," she whispered. "Okay." We sat there in the dim kitchen light, the past between us like broken glass slowly being swept away. She looked up at me, eyes red but open. "Do you want to come over this weekend?" she asked. "Spend time with him." My heart, for all its bruises, still knew joy when it hurt it. "Yes," I said. "I'd like that very much." She smiled, small, unsure, but real. And for the first time in a long, long time, I saw my daughter not as the woman who had pushed me out, but as the little girl who still needed her mother. Not to fix everything, but to just be there, and that I could do. The next few days felt like a slow unfolding. The tension that had hung between us for so long began to ease, like a cloud finally breaking apart after a storm. I didn't expect an instant reconciliation. These things take time. But when Julia called on Friday to say Ethan was looking forward to seeing me, I felt something shift. I was finally going to be in the same room with him again, without the weight of anger or silence. Saturday morning came, and I got ready like I was going to a celebration. The air in my house felt lighter. I wore the same dress I'd worn to his first birthday party, the one with the little flowers. It felt like an old memory, one that hadn't been tainted by bitterness. I arrived at Julia's house a little early, standing on the porch for a moment, just taking it all in. The house was quiet still, the way it always was when I arrived for the weekends with Ethan. But today was different. Today, I wasn't stepping into a role I was told to fill. I was stepping into a space where I had permission to just be. When the door opened, Ethan was standing there, eyes wide with excitement. "Mimi!" he shouted, and ran straight into my arms. He smelled like cinnamon and toothpaste, his little arms wrapping around me as tightly as his small body could manage. I bent down to hug him back. "Hey, buddy, how's my favorite dinosaur expert?" He grinned, showing off that same gap-toothed smile. "I'm the best at dinosaurs, you know that." "I do," I said, ruffling his hair. "I brought you something." I handed him a small gift bag, and his eyes lit up as he pulled out the little dino figurines I knew he'd been wanting. He hugged them to his chest like they were precious treasures. Julia stood behind him, arms crossed, watching us. She was quiet, unsure, but I could see the softening in her expression. She didn't move, didn't interrupt. She let us have this moment, and for once, that was enough. We all went inside. Ethan led the way, showing me the newest drawings he'd made and the puzzles he was working on. Julia stayed in the background, not quite engaging, but not pulling away either. It was as though we were all standing on this new ground together, unsure of what came next, but willing to move forward, one step at a time. We ate lunch together. It wasn't anything fancy, just sandwiches and chips, but there was something about it that felt warm, genuine, like we had finally returned to some semblance of normalcy. There were no forced conversations, no hidden resentments. It was just us, just a family sharing space again. After lunch, we took a walk to the park. Ethan raced ahead, laughing, the joy in his voice filling the air around us. For the first time in months, I didn't feel like I was walking on eggshells. I was just there, in the moment, with the people I loved. Julia and I stayed behind, walking side by side, the distance between us shrinking bit by bit. "I'm sorry, Mom," she said quietly, her voice low but steady. "I should have never treated you like that. I don't know what I was thinking." "I know," I replied, my voice soft, "and I'm sorry too, for not standing up for myself sooner, for letting the silence grow between us." She looked over at me, and for the first time, I saw vulnerability in her eyes, not the coldness I'd grown used to, but something real. "You were right," she said. "I did need you, and I didn't know how to ask." "You don't have to ask," I said gently. "You never did. I'm your mother, and I'm always here, just like I've always been." She nodded, the tension in her shoulders finally relaxing. "I don't deserve you." I shook my head. "We all make mistakes. It's how we fix them that matters." We walked in silence for a few moments, the weight of unspoken words finally starting to lift. When we reached the park, Ethan was sitting on a swing, his legs kicking out in that carefree way only children can manage. He saw us and waved. "Mom, Mimi, come push me." Julia and I shared a look, a moment of quiet understanding. No words, just the understanding that we'd made it to the other side of something painful, something hard. But now we had a chance to rebuild, to create something new. I sat on the swing next to Ethan, pushing him gently. He laughed, arms stretched wide, calling out, "Higher, Mimi, higher!" And for the first time in a long while, I felt like I was exactly where I was meant to be, not asking for permission, not waiting for validation, just being there, present, as his grandmother, as his family. Julia stood by the park bench watching us. She didn't need to say anything more. The past few weeks, the tension, the hurt, had finally been said, finally been felt, and now we were moving forward, not as perfect people, but as real people, trying to do better, trying to heal. The swing creaked beneath me, the wind rustling the trees, and for the first time, I realized that sometimes the most beautiful things aren't the loudest or the brightest. They're the quiet moments of connection, the slow shifts in relationships, the moments that pass without fanfare, but leave you feeling like you've come home. And as I pushed Ethan higher, his laughter filling the air, I felt it. I had my family back. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and feel free to share your story in the comments. Your voice matters.